Hi, Pam.
Hi, Rex, because it's very different. Looks COVID to me.
I've been saying boomers have become Zoomers.
Hi, Liz.
Hello, Rex. Really enjoyed listening. It was very powerful, and I had to go and do a few physical jerks and exercises afterwards because I realized I had been sitting very intent. Thank you so much.
And I thank my mentors.
Well, it's tea time for the English, so I went to make my my cup of tea, and I'll share with you that you know, at this time of the day, I sort of go down like that. So I keep a supply of Cadbury's chocolate in the fridge, and you know, the good old Quaker name. Although over here, it really isn't like home because Hershey use some different ingredient and have the monopoly and won't allow the real deal into the country. So every now and then I get a package in the mail from home, and they all know that if they send me the real deal, I'll be very happy. So I've just had a birthday, and so I have new supplies of the real deal in my fridge.
I'll swing by.
Right, please share.
I have mixed emotions about that. I'm happy for you, Liz. I'm glad you have people who love you that much. And, well, you're a little far away.
Yes. Rex and I don't live very far from each other. Every other Friday, he has a little worship group out of his office now, and on the basis of trust that we have stayed safe from the virus, we can get together. So it is very nice. And then you heard Rex speak about Sadie Mast and her passing. Sadie was my mentor when I came to this part of Oklahoma. And so Rex and I have her as a shared mentor. She has been passing for the last 2.5 years. I have said goodbye to her on many times. It's been very funny. She is a Mennonite, but one of the most active peace workers, isn't that right, Rex, in the state? And
The most active.
the most active, okay, correct me. And so she was a very little lady with an enormous heart. And so Rex and I have undertaken to take Moses out. This is a Mennonite couple, and they had been cemented in marriage and love for how many years, Rex? They met as quite young people before they became missionaries.
Yeah, I would say 70 years, but I don't know if I'm wrong by...
Something like that. So we've undertaken to take Moses under our wing and take him out somewhere safe to eat outside while the weather is still nice in Oklahoma.
And Moses is a gracious Mennonite pastor that has been able to handle being this supportive male for Sadie in all of her busy bee activism for decades and decades.
So this is it. I don't think we need to wait any longer.
Okay.
It's been about 15 minutes, I think.
Okay. So I would love to start with a few minutes silence, and then we will launch into what I truly want to be a celebration of Quakerism. So prepare to be upbeat and take deep breaths. Thank you, friends. So this is Quaker Influence and Initiative, a celebration of pretty much everything that you've heard so far at this gathering. And I think that this workshop is well placed because basically we have heard so much intensity of what Quakers are doing. I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and it's important because the basis and the root of it is Quakerism. And I want you to see how being a Quaker grounds you and gives you the self-confidence, particularly at the moment. And I know that we've started a little late, but then I really want you to share your experience of Quakerism at its best, or Quaker influence at its best in your communities or your meetings, and make this a true celebration of what's happening around us that we are privileged to know about. I was raised in the north of England, the product of generations of English Quakers, spending my summers with my grandparents. My grandfather was the bank manager in a small town in the north of England, and therefore, believe it or not, the most revered person, the most highly trusted. He and my grandma used to go to the local prison and visit prisoners in their mornings. And I was left with a mug of cocoa and things to do around the house, my to-do list. They would come back, and then in the afternoon, they would go to visit the families of the prisoners. I went with them. So from an early age, this was not just about who was incarcerated and how life was for them. This was about the social effect, the effect on the families, the children. How long was the person, male or female, going to be gone? And this is how I grew up. Every summer, I got more and more in tune with this tremendous need in the community, not just for the visitation, but for the homes to know that their loved one was safe. I was very privileged to go to Friends School in Saffron Walden, a very, very good boarding school, and my parents raised an arm and a leg to send me there and lived very, very frugally at home as a result of it. And I'll tell you that I look on the internet now for names I will never forget. My schoolmates, Oriel Parker Rhodes, Anne Rothenstein, Tom Robinson, and what are they doing in the world? oh my goodness, these are wow moments of Quakerism at its best. Powerful Quakerism in action, but with no highlights. And that's just what I want to talk about today. Where is this unhighlighted Quakerism that's all around us and throughout the world? And I know that some of you have real misgivings about Quaker schools, but I will tell you that yes, it is the privileged few that go. Only 10% of those going are Quakers because Quakers mostly can't afford to go. But give or take that, there, I believe, are 70 schools in this country, and the influence that comes from these schools, the way they teach, is so different, so very different. It is very individualized, and it is a listening process. It is a two-way process of teaching and sending young people out into the world. Dave and I got married in a very tiny meeting house in a very small village in Essex in the south of England. And my mother, being an avid Quaker, invited the entire village. And I said to her, there is absolutely no way. And she said, what do you mean no way? Just leave it to me. Well, this was such a small meeting house. But what I found was, as I spoke my Quaker vows, that all the people in the village were so fascinated. What is this Quakerism? We've never seen a lot of people in this Quaker meeting house before. And of course, the Quaker meeting house was the center of the village. But nobody much went there, and the gates were mostly closed, and it was only on a Sunday. So my wedding, there were people from the village on step ladders peering in at the top windows. And I looked up from my vows, and there they were, just aghast at all these Quaker people sitting on very uncomfortable benches. And I thought then, there is enormous interest in Quakerism, enormous interest in it from not only the historical side of why are our meeting houses so central in so many parts of the world, but in what do we believe? Who are we? Our 3 children were diagnosed with dyslexia. If you know anything about education in England, if you can't dot your I's and cross your T's and know that the language comes from the Latin and know a little Latin and be able to tie your shoelaces and not be clumsy, there really is no place for you, or there wasn't then, and I mean maybe very out of touch. But then I got the message one after the other that the children, there was no place for them in the school. So what do? These children were incredibly bright. And I was just not feeling adequate to answer all their questions. And then my husband's job collapsed, and he became very, very seriously ill from the stress and the uncomfortable feeling of failure. He was hospitalized for almost a year and then went into care. So I decided one day, on a Quaker whim, as I call it, standing straight upwards, I was going to call my mother-in-law, who was a great person, and say to her, can you lend me the train fare? I need to go up to London. So she did, and I went up to London to a friend's house, with no appointment. And I just felt this was what I needed to do. To cut a very long story short, at the end of approaching friends at friends' house, I was offered from their education funds, and I had no idea what their budget was. I was offered a scholarship for each of my children to go to Sibford School in Oxfordshire. And they did. But after I got the phone call offering me these scholarships, there was another detail that I kept very quiet about, but friends had not overlooked it. Where was I going to live with my black lab? They offered me a job as a janitor, but they didn't call it that. And I call it that now because I am so proud of it. They offered me a job at a meeting house, which had a tiny 2-bedroom cottage attached with a downstairs bathroom and not much that worked, but it didn't really matter. It was a roof over my head. And I thought I was going to be cleaning toilets. But in actual fact, it was the very best thing that could possibly have happened to me, because I found myself the center of the community, getting to know who was the person who organized the dance classes for the children. They all straggled in after school and dumped their bags and things, and I cleaned a room for them to dance in, and there was music, and it was wonderful. And AA met there 3 times a week. And there was a small library. It was perfect for them. And I made coffee. And I understood the confidentiality, but they really needed that kind of supporting. There were elderly people's clubs. And I remember the Evergreen Club and all the people who came to the meeting house. And it was like God's gift to me. I got very good at moving furniture, but I also got to be very good at timing it so that I could always have conversations with the people from the neighborhood who came, the moms, the teachers, everybody. And when my husband went into a care home for a while, they extended my stay, and the children were fine. And they came home, and we all shared this very, very small space in their vacations. We had absolutely no income whatsoever. But looking back on it now, and having hardly ever talked about this, I feel amongst friends how important it is to talk about it, because it's amazing. It's amazing. And I don't ever remember being without what I needed. I had a wonderful mother-in-law who paid for my groceries, and the rest is as I have described it. And everything was so joyous. In 1992, my husband had graduated from nursing school in an adult class in London. And I was so proud of this achievement. After all we'd been through, it was amazing, just amazing. And I felt this enormous calling to look for a different way of life that was right for all of us. And thus, after 3 years of the paperwork, we found that Dave's father in Wisconsin would act as our guarantor so that we had the right of entry into the United States. And I listen to Rex and I wonder, where did that go? Because what he was doing was saying, here is a family that needs to come to the United States for whatever their personal reasons are. 5 people and a rabbit. And here they are. And all we really need is to make them take seriously that when they get here, they need to contribute. And he would be our financial guarantor. But we knew that we came to contribute. And truly, as a nurse and then a hospice nurse before he retired, it has been a wonderful experience here. And of course, by that time, the children fitted straight into your very forgiving education system. In Wisconsin, I worked for the Wisconsin IRIS program as a social worker and a consultant. And it was a program that was a pilot scheme for the country, and all other states were watching it very carefully. It was for 2 categories of people. One category was the elderly, and the other category was adults with disabilities. Both categories feeling very strongly, those that we served, that they did not want to live in facilities. At that time, it cost $9,000 per month for an individual to be in a facility. And there were so many people who just needed basic supports. So my job was to go from door to door to these people that had wanted help, to ask for help, and to set up a budget based on what they said were their needs. And it was amazing listening to them. I mean, the really basic things. They had their friends in their neighborhoods. The Meals on Wheels person who came, they always hijacked him and had these wonderful conversations. What they needed were help with getting their medications, help with setting them up, this kind of thing. And for the young adults, what they wanted more than anything else was safe housing. And we were able to set up, to buy houses and set up safe housing for a group of 4 of them at a time, and have a caregiver living in the house who had his own or her own job, but was there for them to come home to, there to cook breakfast and send them on their way. And we found basic jobs for them so they would be employed. It was an amazing, amazing program. And I keep meaning to look to see where else it has been adopted in the country. But I learned so much from that. I think that in my retirement, having been so supported by Quakers, having come to America and found Quakers wherever I've gone, moving to Oklahoma because my daughter's job made it very difficult for her to look after the children, and her husband was abroad a lot. What is important to me is not to be anything special, but to be an effective Quaker. It is this effectiveness that sits in my brain. It's how you live. It's who you hang out with. It's how you think. It's your way of life. And who notices all these things? Everybody you come in contact with. So come in contact with everybody. Put yourself in that position that I found myself in Harpenden at the meeting house. Put yourself every now and then out there. It is more difficult in some ways with the COVID, although that has not been my experience. My experience has been that more people feel more isolated and then need more company. And things like Zoom and the quietness of the street, which means you can have neighborly conversations. And we ran lemonade stands in the community where the kids raised money for all sorts of community activities in Oklahoma City. And I'll tell you about one of them. This is where Quaker influence is all over the place, but this is just one example. So I said to my granddaughters, okay, so we're going to be making lots and lots and lots of lemonade. We're sitting tables out here. Everybody's socially distanced. People will walk by with their dogs. This is very, very safe. You will wear a mask as you pass a cup to the person, but you will not touch the cup. So they're in a big stream of cups like this. Anyway, so I said, the big thing is, what do you want to raise money for? Animals. We want to raise money for animals. So the first thing we did was to get together this group of 6 young people. So I love working with young people. And so we got together this group of young people and made sure it was okay with their parents. I promise, I said, to keep them safe. They need to bring a mask. We'll keep them safe. We're going to be outside. The weather's wonderful, all the rest of it. So we set up our stand, and we're still wondering, okay, what are we going to raise money for? Animals? What's that? So I started Googling, and what do I find? I find it's called the Pet Food Pantry. Oh, this sounded right. Just the ticket. Let's do this. Everybody in the neighborhood has a pet. And what is happening? Can everybody now afford to keep a pet? Can they afford to feed it? So you start reading about these terribly, terribly sad stories, how the Humane Society is reaching out to communities because people are handing in their pets. They can't afford to feed them. So I reached out to this organization out of the center of Oklahoma City, and they told me that they had been doing this for years and years and years. And I said, well, we want to raise money for it. We're going to have a lemonade stand. When we arrived with our check, what I will tell you is that amazing things happened. There were volunteers with their cars stacked high, just ordinary vehicles, with all this pet food going out to people for cats and dogs and birds. And the volunteers just wanted to tell these children so badly what they were doing and what it meant to the people and to the volunteers. They were delivering this, but they said, do you know what was happening before we were doing this? And I'm like, I just imagine that, I don't know. So they said, well, we were approached by Meals on Wheels, and Meals on Wheels had become very, very concerned because as they delivered their meals, little old ladies and gentlemen living on their own with their pet would say, oh, a meal for Fido, thank you so much. They were giving their food to their pets. And so now they work together. These 2 organizations right in the center of Oklahoma City, and one delivers a meal and the other delivers Fido's food. The Fido's food is enough for a month. So this is a monthly delivery. No, 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 Fido, you're not to take the Meals on Wheels. That's for your owner. And it's very, very important. And you see, when you start talking to these people, there isn't a Quaker in sight. But my very, very strong feeling is this is Quakerism at its best. This is taking children into the community and having them listen to people who know. They know the spirit is out there. And I just came home. This was not at all, I am not a good organizer. This was sort of on the fly. But I believe that the children got so much out of this. And truly, I really learned that in the city that those of you who listened to Rex know of all the awful things that are going on. These are some of the wonderful things. So some of my time is spent in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, because my last little grandchild was born with every disability under the sun. And no, don't feel sorry. He actually is the big, big joy of my life. He is charismatic. He's just the most wonderful 4.5-year-old. He is about to have an ear created for him because his eyesight is not good. And before he starts school, he needs something to hook his glasses onto. And he's only got one ear. So he's going to go right across the country from Philadelphia to Los Angeles to the only surgeon who makes ears. And Dave and I will take our motorhome up to greet him when he comes back in October. And I've been telling Jan about this for, oh, it seems like forever. But Jan, this is really, really about to happen. So, you know, when Sam was born, Sam's mom was absolutely mortified. This is a genetic disorder from her side of the family. And truly, this is about Sally. This is really that Sally needs so much support. And so with Haddonfield meeting just outside Philadelphia, and incredible friends who live all around this family. No, my son does not call himself a Quaker, but it doesn't matter to friends in the Philadelphia area. They visit, they call, they know all about Sam, and Haddonfield friends set up a special class for Sam when I go to meeting there, and Sam needs so much attention and medicine given at certain times and so on. And I'm like, whoa, how good can life get? I talked with, I call her my boss, but I work as a volunteer for prison visitation and support. It's out of Philadelphia. It's in Philadelphia. It's in the Philadelphia Quaker Center, and a couple of little rooms. They pay very little rent. There are just 2 people who are paid. The rest of us are volunteers. And I listen to them, and I wanted to talk to some of my friends in Philadelphia before doing this talk. And oh my goodness me, the joy coming down the phone. If I couldn't stop them talking. And one of the things that really came across was this very deep connection between the Jewish people and the Quakers. And this amazing liaison and activity going on in Pennsylvania, especially in Philadelphia. And then one of the things that that my boss Eileen told me was, hey, Liz, you think that the COVID is all bad? Well, you know what's happening is every time people grow things in their gardens, there is way too much produce. So we had the city of Pennsylvania set up. They are yellow fridges and plug them in throughout the poorer parts of the city. And every day they get filled 3 times a day with fresh fruit and veggies. Nobody really knows where they come from, and there are no messages, but they are very quickly emptied by people in need who get what they need. And she said, wow, she said, what did it take to do that? Hardly anything at all. It was just someone's idea. And the electricity thing was a little bit tricky, but we got past that. Like, there are no hurdles when you put your mind to it. And so that's how I think of those parts of Philly now, is yellow fridges on every corner popping up. William Penn said this: I expect to pass through the world but once. Any good, therefore, that I can do, or any kindness that I can show to any fellow creature, let me do it now. Let me not defer or neglect it, for I shall not be passing this way again. I want to tell you about Stillwater friends. They are my friends. They are very special people in my life. I got so annoyed with them when the COVID came. Oh my goodness, the other side of my nature. I got so upset. I wanted to call Jan and bang on the table, but I thought, no, he's such a peaceful person. He's not going to appreciate this. But I know he knows how I feel, because, you know how Quakers are. One tells the other and the other tells the other. And so I knew that everybody would know. But truly, I got very upset because other meetings was Zooming so quickly. And what were we doing? Absolutely nothing. We fell apart. But actually, I have to be super careful because I tend to rush to judgment. You know, it's not a Quakerly trait of mine. And I started calling round at friends, and what I discovered was this. So many of the very active friends in our meeting, and we're a very small meeting, are academics. They are at the university. Their role when COVID came was to support the students, not only academically, but in a very, very special way. There was a lot of fear, a lot of where do I go, what do I do, what's happening to my classes, my studies, a lot of uncertainty. And I realized why. Energy was not going into Zoom, because energy was going into Stillwater, and it was going into the student base in a very big way. And that continues with new intake. And one of our members even does dog therapy for the students. And they line up 6 feet apart, very well socially distanced, because the therapy that dogs offer is very special, and it's very personal, and it's very spiritual. And then we have Jan, and I don't need to say anymore. All of you know Jan, and you know his investment in Quaker meetings and all things Quaker that is very important to him, that he is able to undertake. And it happens so quietly and so gently. And then we have Anne. I will rest my case and say no more. Jan, have I left anybody out? I am not sure. But Anne's representation of nurturing our young absolutely thrills me. And Stillwater Meeting has welcomed my granddaughters who have been living with me into their fold. And it has been so joyous and funny and entertaining. And the 5-year-old will say, well, when are we going again? I like Jan. And then she'll come out with, I say, well, why do you like Jan? Because he doesn't say much. He just smiles. I think they just feel very, very comfortable amongst us. And that's all I can really hope for, that they feel well supported. Because for young people at the moment, it is so uncertain. And although many of us maybe overlook it, they hear the stress and the anxiety everywhere they are, whether it's getting to school, coming home from school. Are we going to school? Who is my teacher? And then being told that their teacher has resigned because she is fearful. And thus I joined with Little Rock meeting, and I think Jan joined with Tulsa, and so I stopped feeling upset and dissatisfied and crabby with my co-Quakers in Stillwater and realized what an opportunity this is. This COVID. Look, I mean, I asked for Pam's email address because I want to send a thank you to Pam for the way she hosted 2 sessions I was in, because it has taught me she has this lovely low-key Quaker way of instantly making one feel at home, but drawing attention to the very important task we have to do. And I listened to Joni speaking today with almost tears in her eyes, as the session we went to, Joni, was so intense, wasn't it? It absolutely took my breath away this afternoon, listening to Peace and Justice, because here am I celebrating, but I needed, and I knew I needed to go to that workshop to hear these very, very powerful Quaker testimonies to things happening across the world and what we need to do. And we do need to do it. We do need to act. So in Little Rock, 2 things I just want to mention, apart from the love that I've come to have for John and Tina and others, is that I have spent some time looking at the Carillon, which is what Tina, it's a Quaker ministry that Tina writes and puts out. It is so profound and so special, and I love having it. And as one who said at the business meeting, let's not waste paper, I actually couldn't do without it in my home. It's just a very little publication, and I feel quite hypocritical because after I had said that, you know, please let's not be printing all these things out and wasting paper. I sit down and I think, oh, I so need some of the ministry from the Carillon. And then I just wanted to give a shout out to the Winrock International. Winrock is out of Little Rock and out of Washington, D.C. And one of the members from Little Rock meeting oversees communications and public affairs there. So I spent time with him, And Winrock International is a non-profit organization. It's a recognized leader in the US and international development. It provides solutions to some of the world's most complex social, agricultural, and environmental challenges, and was initially inspired by Winthrop Rockefeller. Its mission is to empower the disadvantaged, increase economic opportunity, and sustain natural resources. And it credits itself with global giving to over 46 countries. And when I spoke with Dave, in a typical Quaker way, he was very understated about his job, and yet very ready to say that the Quaker spirit penetrates this company, and every decision that is made there is made with enormous spiritual thought. I'm just going to wave this piece of paper to you. This is a list of all these Quaker organizations that you have heard from at this. It goes on and on. And I actually got this from the Friends Journal, this listing. When I spoke to them, they just want you to know at this conference that these will be recognized in the October issue of Friends Journal. And she spoke to me, the editor spoke to me at length about how important it is to get this word out. What are Quakers doing across the world at this time? And the one that really captured my mind was Friendly Water for the World, training communities around the world to ensure safe water and be able to manufacture liquid soap. And how are we doing for time? I think as a mother, I just want to tell you one thing that I think you will relate to, that we all in one way or another have expectations of our children. And I was no different. And it's one thing in my retirement that I'm trying very hard to work on, is not to have expectations. Having been to Quaker boarding schools, I almost took it for granted that my children would come over here and would be part of Quaker meetings and would be active Quakers. And I've been disappointed. I visited my eldest son, who lives in a very, very affluent white neighborhood in Minnesota, not so very long ago. And I hadn't seen him for a while. And I know I can be honest with you and say, I have been disappointed with his choices. He has now been promoted to be the manager of his company. And he lives in this very, very predominantly white neighborhood, incredibly affluent, with schools across the board that have absolutely no sign of color in them. So my grandchildren there grow up really, I felt, knowing absolutely nothing about poverty or color or any life different to their own very privileged one. But I was wrong. On my visit last time, he very quietly, he's a very quiet guy, took me on a trip, and he showed me the high-rise, no, it is not high-rise. He showed me the blocks of low-income houses that have popped up. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I don't suppose those people from the very affluent houses quite like looking out on there. And he said, well, I got myself on the planning committee. And he said, they seem to like me, and they really seem to trust the way I speak. And I thought, oh, well, this is very interesting for somebody who comes from learning difficulties and was written off from school at an early age. So now he's doing public speaking. Oh, okay. And had the confidence to put himself on the local planning committee. So I said, okay, so when did this pop up? And he said, well, all these people knew when they built their houses that this land had been designated for low-income housing. So I said, okay. So they have fought against it for all these years. Well, he said, I just thought it was time. So I said, okay, so how did you manage this? And in a just very understated sort of a Quaker way, he said, well, I just mentioned to them that life here is very good, isn't it? Oh, yeah, I all thought it was very good. So I said, so you need someone to cut your hair, and you need a grocery store, and you need a bicycle shop and a hardware shop, and you need fast food and a gas station, and what else do you need? A library? Well, who's going to run all those places? And where are they going to live? Where are they living? What are you expecting? And there was silence. And it passed. And I am super proud of him. And his project at the moment is not only helping to close the coal mines in the Dakotas, because the company he works for is an energy company. And again, when he first started in that company, I was heartbroken. And now what I see is it takes somebody to rise to the top because they're trusted of a company like this. Everybody needs the energy, but we don't want it from coal. And he is closing the mines in the Dakotas. But I said to him, what happens to all those people? They are totally dependent on this industry. And he said, we are installing wind power. We are talking with them. We will do nothing to get rid of their jobs until we have these things installed. And I was so moved, and I really wanted to share this with you. My expectations really, it is a life lesson to me in my retirement. And I truly believe that for so many people, this Quaker spirit stays with you and you find your moment. And we don't all find it at the same time. I love the work of Parker Palmer, and he has been so mentioned in this conference. But I just wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about John Lewis and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and just say that my friend has just written a poem, and my poetry class is a very profound part of my life. And it is, They Walked Among Us. And I really want to bring to your attention that in 2007, the Edward F. Schneider Award for National Legislative Leadership in Advancing Disarmament and Building Peace was presented by Friends Committee on National Legislation to John Lewis. It was presented for his work for civil rights and for his opposition to the Iraq War. He walked among us. And there is on the desk of politicians a very, very important document which needs to get through the House that he has left behind. And it is as close to a Quaker document on enabling everyone to have the vote, as you will find anywhere. But it has sat in a pile on the desks of politicians since December the 6th of last year. And Minga, she is on my list. And when I talked ahead of time to Jan about this, he said, oh, don't forget Meryl Streep. And I haven't forgotten her, because when I looked at all that this amazing lady has done, I found a piece that she had written, and it actually brought to our attention that she comes from a long, long line of Quakers, the first settlers in Rhode Island and Pennsylvania, and she traces them back to William Penn on her maternal side. And it's a joy. And I'm sort of waiting for one of these award ceremonies when, you know, I'll send her a text saying, just give us a shout, because I think she might. And Sadie Mast, Rex and I have really said it all. Lifelong peace worker, and just an amazing, very tiny woman who achieved amazing things and died very recently. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG. I wanted just to read something that she said and then tell you why it is so relevant. I ask no favors for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they will take their feet from off our necks and permit us to stand upright on that ground which God designated us to occupy. And do you know where that comes from? It is a direct quotation from 1837 from Quaker Sarah Grimke, one of the first abolitionists and women's rights activists. Oh yes, the Quaker spirit is alive and it is well. And I wanted to mention Marianne Lockhart. So many of you know Marianne. If we are giving a shout out to wonderful Quakers in our midst, she is no longer able to play that role, but she is still with us. As a part of the prison reform and support, I now visit by letter writing her prisoners. And I want to read you what one of them has just written to me. In his handwriting, he says, Liz, I am so happy to know you, but Marianne's light is much greater than any words of mine could adequately express. Marianne is now in memory care in Little Rock. And lastly, I wanted to bring to your attention the name Dave Matthews. Dave Matthews is a name that our children know very, very well if they like rock music. And it's not powerful rock music, but it's very powerful music. Dave Matthews was brought up in South Africa with parents fighting apartheid. And he left there with his Quaker spirit and all his Quaker loving because he could not face conscription. And he came to Charlottesville in Virginia. Dave Matthews created a band, and he is known by millions across the world. They sway to his music. It's not what you think of as rock. And you could come to know every word he says because it's meaningful and it's powerful. And I want you to know that my young people are into this and their friends are into this. And he has set up in Charlottesville their own charity. Millions of their dollars every year go into where are the disasters in the world. Send it to Haiti, send it all over the place. Sri Lanka, Habitat for Humanity, wherever they need it, and to New Orleans after Katrina. So Dave Matthews, carry his name with you, because these are the things that truly are happening all around us, that so many people know of that generation, know his name. I want them to know what his Quaker spirit is leading him to do in his success story. So I have not been at all a good timekeeper, but if you have something to share, I would love you to do that. And maybe they'll give us an extra few minutes as we started late. Karen, what time is the next? I have it here, I think, somewhere. We've
Well,
got,
after this, it just goes into dinner and community time.
oh,
So
okay.
This can
So
continue.
They might give us an extra few minutes. So I'm going to ask you to speak, but as we go into our time capsule to go back to join the others, I'm also going to ask you to sing. Joan Baez sings Kumbaya so much better than I can, but I will lead you on 2 verses of it. And we will enter the time capsule together, celebrating Quakerism, because I, like those friends of mine in Philadelphia, I feel it's alive. It's in all of you, and it's everywhere, and it's very active. You just have to find it. Speak to me.
Well, when you mentioned Joan Baez, I just want to say that I have seen her twice in Baton Rouge in the last 5 years. And on both occasions, I hung around after the concert like a groupie, and she hugged me and talked briefly, and I have invited her to Baton Rouge meeting, although she has yet to come. But it was just so exciting. So one was a big concert in a big hall downtown, and the other was a much more intimate concert in a listening room with an audience of about 100. And that show was, of course, the best because she was just right there. But she was always so gracious, and and the second time she sort of remembered that there was a Quaker here who had talked to me before. That's me. I'm still inviting you to come to our meeting when you come to town.
Oh, that's
great. One of her musicians is from Brobridge, which is not far from here toward Lafayette. So she actually does have opportunities to be in this part of the country. So anyway, that's just my Joan Baez story.
You mentioned Marianne, and I had gotten a text from her daughter, Carol. We got it just yesterday. And so there's a picture of Marianne from yesterday. And she was in really good spirits. She looks good in this picture. Yes. And so she's adjusted pretty well to her memory care unit, and seems to be doing, she feels safe there, I think. And so she's not the anxious Marianne that she was earlier, a few months earlier. So, but yes, I miss her visits. She really spread that sense of Quakerism and that listening ministry that she shared with so many of us was so valuable, and I truly appreciated her.
And I knew her through prison visitations, and had the privilege of sharing a room with her in Texas when we were at a prison conference. It was wonderful.
Mhm.
I can tell about what I think of as a Quaker stealth program. So a couple of years ago, I was at a Quaker.
A little louder, Jan.
Okay, I'll speak up. A couple of years ago, I was at a committee meeting, and somebody on a side table had left out various buttons, and one of them said, "Make America Kind Again." So I picked one up, and that was nice, and I liked it. And I liked it well enough, I thought, well, let me see if I can find more of them. So I found a place on the internet, and I ordered 24 of them. And when I was out and around, I would wear this button that says "Make America Kind Again," and a cashier might say, "You know, I like that button." And I'd say, "Here it is, it's yours." And I'd give her the button, and of course, when I came home, I could put on another one. And so over several months, I gave them all away.
I love it.
You too.
Jan, do you still have that source for that button? We could all do that. See if you can maybe put it in chat as a message or something, or let us know through email or something. That'd be great.
I guess I have a Mary Ann story. When she was visiting prisoners in Rocheron, which is just south of Houston, she often stayed with us, partly because she could come and go as she needed to and eat, and I didn't mind if she kept Diet Pepsi in the refrigerator and one thing and another. But she almost always left something behind. Pajama bottoms, underwear, and so as I change the sheets, I just wash it and leave it for her. However, and I often thought of one of the drawers in the dresser as Mary Ann's stuff. But we had another guest who was staying for 6 weeks while she went through a training program, and she needed the drawers. And she couldn't figure out why there was all this miscellaneous stuff in that drawer. So she just put it somewhere else. And I have yet to figure out where it actually went. So I'm sure that someplace Mary Ann has, or probably Carol has wondered why there's a pajama top with no matching bottoms. If anybody knows or wants it, it's here.
The last time she visited with us, she left a little travel bottle of shampoo and cream rinse in the bathroom. And it stayed on the little shelf in there forever. It's in our hall bathroom. We don't use that shower in there anymore because I store things behind the curtain. We turned our guest room into a library, so we don't have other people sleep here. They sleep next door. So if they're not sleeping here, they don't need that shower, and I do need more storage. So I think her shampoo and cream rinse are still in there behind the boxes.
Oh, and I have one more story for you, particularly for Pam. Joan, one of the times when Joan Baez did a concert at Cornell, she did attend the Ithaca meeting.
And you were there?
Oh, you were at that. I was the organizer for the concert.
Oh.
Me and my company did security tickets and whatnot for lots of the concerts held at Cornell.
Well, if anybody else has to be in my club that I thought was elite, I'm You're good friends from way back, so I'll share this with you. Okay. Welcome to my Joan Baez Hugger Club.
Well, I left yearly meeting early last year because she was performing in Fayetteville. And you had told me that you had invited her to meeting, so we tried to get a message to her to invite her to Fayetteville meeting. We sent a message through the art center where she would be playing, and so we have no idea if she got the message, but she didn't come.
Oh, I'm sure she got it. Oh, certainly. We will trust Spirit on that.
Absolutely.
She's so tiny.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Is that right? Yeah.
Tiny.
Hmm.
Well, I truly appreciate your sharing your stories, Lizzie, and I think what I take away from it is the power of individual actions, living your light, living your spirit, living that everyday practice of living in the spirit, and yeah, that truly is something that I think that for us, when we can have it within ourselves, that we can share out there. So
We have 5 more minutes, they tell us. I feel that this Quaker sense of togetherness and how important it is just so valuable, and we so need that closeness to support the spirit in us individually. I think that, yes, I'm looking forward to Stillwater meeting, getting together again in person, but I do love the Zoom that comes into my home. I love having you all in my home, and I, in many ways, feel so much more relaxed. You have no idea that I have my pajama bottoms on and my slippers, and truly I feel extremely relaxed. I haven't had to drive anywhere. I don't have any stresses. The background of Clara snoring is really quite soporific, but she is my little black dog. But I just feel that I feel very grateful to Zoom because it has extended my Quaker family, and it has brought Quaker smiles at a time when I think they are so needed. And that's, I think of my Quaker ancestors on the wall. They are so severe. They don't smile, they're so proper. The oil paintings I've inherited, just so severe and proper and no smile. And I tell them off every now and then, because how I see Quakers is that huge smile, or at least the wrinkles here, which show they smile a lot.